Howdy, everyone. I'm Professor Parks, and I advocate for the advancement of astronomy. Now, one of these days, I will trust the fact that when it tells me that I'm live, I'm actually live. So, I'm going to pop out the chat, and hopefully it will let me know what's what. Assuming also that the sound and all that is good, so. Howdy, Sin Lion. Hopefully you can hear me, see me, all that kind of good stuff. Apparently, yes. All right, so this is yet another one of my impromptu Professor Parks Pontificates live streams. Howdy, Judy. Howdy, Ro. As you may have... Coco is here. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Ro. You may have been noticing that I've been posting lectures on my channel, and I would like to continue to do that. The main reason why I was doing that was because you may have heard something about a winter storm kind of sort of hitting the eastern United States, or really the majority of the United States. And yeah, my car got kind of buried for a while. Finally, I actually got a snow shovel and dug my ass out, but for a couple three lectures, I actually, I was virtual. So I said, well, if I'm virtual, I might as well record these and post these. I'm trying to figure out a way to, like today I had 2 lectures. I actually have a third one later, which is why I can't stay too long. And the 2 lectures that I did today were effectively continuations of the lectures that I have posted, so they're kind of the part 2. I would like to get those up. However, I really don't want to lecture twice about the same subject. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that I can actually go live, or rather record the lecture in the class where you can actually hear me. I can record the slides, that's not a problem. It's how do I get the sound into the recording. So I have a lavalier mic, and so I'm hoping that'll work out too. Dig your car out? No. The main, sorry, I would love to, but yeah, I determined after doing that I am ridiculously out of shape. So it definitely has yet again prompted me to take a look at the whole exercise diet thing. Also, completely random, because it was a completely random student, not one of mine. Guy decided to come up to me and ask, has anyone ever told you you look like Penn from Penn and Teller? Like, nope, that's a new one. And I'm like, I love me some Penn, but I don't want to love me looking like Penn. So, I don't know. Anyway, so I created those lectures, and I'm hoping to be able to continue along and bring you those lectures, including the lecture tonight that I'm going to be giving about. It's kind of actually a repetition because I'm going to be going over light, the quantities of light for my observational techniques class, which I also went over light for my 103 class, but the 104 might be tailored a little differently. So, but anyway, so Exoplanets and God, what's that all about? That's what he said. He claimed that the reason why he made the connection was the glasses. I was like, okay, glasses, ponytail, I get it. Snow has consumed your car. It didn't. I live in Fairfax, Virginia, and we got, I guess, a foot of snow. This is as far north as I've ever lived. So I have never experienced snow like this. I've obviously seen it. It snowed every couple of years here, so that's not a problem. But I've never seen snow to this amount. So it's hard for me to judge just how much it is. Judging by how much I had to dig out, I'd say we got about a foot of snow. seen a guy drive around with a 3 by 6 foot block of snow on top. For us, no, I have not seen that. I attempted not to drive with a 1 foot thick by 3 foot block of ice because I thought that might be a little rude if it were, to fall off in mid traffic. But yeah, a foot of snow for a Virginian, I think is a lot of snow. But anyway, so why am I live, and particularly why Exoplanets and God? Well, I just came out of, about an hour ago, I just finished up a lecture, my Astronomy 115 Exoplanets class. And it's a 4-credit class for those of you who are not savvy with universities. A normal lecture class would be 3 credit hours. Basically, that means that you meet for 3 hours of the week, either 3 times a week at an hour apiece or 50 minutes apiece, or 2 times a week at an hour and a half apiece. This is 4 credits because it also has a lab component attached to it. So the lecture itself, which I don't care for, but the lecture itself, the class itself meets for about 2.5 hours. Twice a week. And so because I was virtual, I wasn't able to really do any sort of lab activity, but I was able to do it today. And I can't take credit for this exactly. So, but the initial idea was actually created by one of the people who created the course in the first place, who no longer teaches it, Dr. Becky Erickson, who is semi-retired from George Mason. And the assignment was to use generative AI to kill a whole bunch of trees, but more specifically to create an exoplanet trading card. Now, I knew about this because I had Astronomy Magazine put out this, which is exoplanet flashcards. And so here is an example of one of them. This is an extremely romantic name, PSR B1620-26B. It's actually interesting because the PSR tells me that this planet is actually orbiting a pulsar, or a star that went supernova at one point. And in the back, it has, it's statistics, that sort of thing, height, weight, favorite food. And it gives a little blurb, like, for example, at 13 billion years old, PSR B1620-26b is the oldest known planet in our Milky Way galaxy. It orbits 2 dead stars, a white dwarf, and a pulsar. I didn't know that. The picture itself is, of course, an artist's rendition. We do not have an image of this planet in any way, as far as I know, not even with a coronagraph. So obviously, this is a rendition, or an artist's rendition, and it is a speculative rendition on top of that. Like, if someone who is skeptical about these sorts of things were to look at this, no astronomer actually thinks that this planet, Methuselah, as it's conventionally called, we don't actually think it looks like this. Do we think it might look like this? Maybe. But this is not put out there as fact. Like, this is what it looks like. It's just fun to think about, all right, hey, what do the planets look like? So with that, I decided to put forward the assignment was, again, to use generative AI to replicate something. And so what I would like to do is I'd like to show you some of the product these students came up with. I think I've got like 3 of them. I'm fucking tickled pink. I am just very excited. This was a way cool experience. I was not expecting the experience to be as cool as it was. I was kind of dreading it because this is the first time that I'm doing it, so I was nervous to see how it would all play out. And obviously there are lessons that I need to learn and all that kind of good stuff. But what they created was way cooler than what I thought it was. And actually, it kind of looks like Pokemon cards. So here is one example. I need to find, there it is. So, actually, I want to, there it is. So here we have, too many windows. You'd think that I would be old hat at this, but. So the idea was use AI to create an image of what the planet is supposed to look like. For a few groups, I don't know, maybe all of the groups, but a few groups, they actually Googled images of what the planets are supposed to look like. And actually one of these, they have yet to submit their card, but one of the picture is directly from one of these trading cards. But create an image of what the planet's supposed to look like. Give its official designation, and then come up with an alternative name. My example was Planet Bob, and if you catch that reference, then you're a geek. Congratulations. This one is Planet Gaia. Not, the most original, but it's good, and it's on point because Tau Ceti E is thought to be a Earth analog in a way. They needed to include what type of planet was, its mass, its radius, and so forth. So this particular planet, Tau Ceti E, is what's known as a super Earth, meaning that it has a size somewhere between 2 to 10 Earth masses. For this particular one, I believe it weighs in at approximately 4.3 times the mass of the Earth. Its radius is about 1.6 times the mass or the radius of the Earth. So for those of you out there who are mathematically savvy, you can actually determine what the surface gravity of this planet is from those two numbers. It is fairly close to us at only a minuscule 12 light years away. So if we were to travel to this, if we were going at the speed of light, it would only take 24 years to make the round trip. Easy peasy. It orbits its planet at around 168 days, so its year is roughly half that of the Earth. And it is in the habitable zone of its star. That means that it has a temperature where liquid water can exist on its surface. I have spoken about how much I dislike the habitable zone as a metric for determining if life can or does exist on a planet, but that's kind of where we're stuck. We need to have some kind of stepping stone, so that's what I've got. I actually need to update I need to turn a lot of people blue in my chat. If I can remember how to do that. But anyway, and then also give a planetary description. Again, it's a rocky super Earth. And they describe the planetary system. I don't know about y'all, but I just think this is fucking way cool. Like I said, it looks like a Pokemon card. And yes, I have Pokemon cards sitting on my desk. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Granted, there are some aesthetic tweaks that I don't really care for. Some of these, strong gravity is bolded, for example, that I don't think it needs to be. But overall, I'm going to print this out. I'm making a poster out of this thing, and it's going to go on my wall somewhere. And for all of these that are in a PDF, or not PDF, in a JPEG or some kind of image that can be blown up to any extent, can survive being turned into a poster, so going to print them so going up on my walls. There is a series, NASA actually has a series of these for, and you can kind of see over there, Kepler 16086 F. It's a travel poster. It doesn't have any information on it, but it's kind of, again, another fun, artistic, stylized look at what the world would look like if you're on it. But yeah, I'm definitely going to print this out. But so here are a couple. Here's another one. Here's actually a different version of this. So the group was supposed to have, there are 5 people in the group, and they were all having the same planet, and they were supposed to present the same end product. For whatever reason, this group, one of them submitted the previous poster, and then this person submitted this poster. So I do need to figure out which one I want, which one is cooler, A or B. I'm thinking I'm liking A more than I like B, but I don't know. If you have a preference, put in the chat. A, B. I'll probably print both, to be honest with you, assuming that the files are large enough for me to survive being printed into a poster. This one is double-sided. So here's the front of the card. Here's the back of the card, which gives a little bit of information. Again, I don't know why this is centered justification, whereas these 2 paragraphs are left justified. We got to vote for A and we got to vote for B. All right. So yes, again, little aesthetic tweaks here and there. And I also need to actually read through this to make sure that the text is correct. Although I can see here it is Yeri similar, Y-E-R-Y, to the Earth in Beth size and the amount of starlight it receives. So I don't know what AI generated this, but it certainly wasn't ChatGPT. I did make the statement going in that I didn't want them using Grok. Now, obviously that's not a hard and fast rule, but I was like, please don't use Grok. So, but I don't know what they actually use to generate these things. But I'm just geeking out about how these look. These came out way better than I anticipated that they would come out. And then there's TRAPPIST 1F. TRAPPIST system this is also very pretty. They don't give me a lot of information here, which I'll deal with when I actually grade it. But and this right here is a bit misleading. Yes, there are 7 Earth-sized planets in the TRAPPIST system. TRAPPIST 1 is just a crazy system. I love me some TRAPPIST 1. It may be, in fact, my favoriteest planetary system. There are 7 Earth-sized planets. All of them, I believe, are within the orbit of Mercury. If you were to place that system in our solar system, they would all be closer to the center of the system than Mercury. The problem here is that it says 7 Earth-sized planets in the habitable zone. Not really. This particular one is in the habitable zone. This is the one that's furthest out. But the 2 that are inside, A or B and C and maybe D, are not. Definitely B and C. B and C are too close to the star. They're not in the habitable zone. So this is sort of saying that all 7 are in the habitable zone, when in fact only 3 of them are typically. But they don't give me a fun name for it though. This is just another designation for the system. This is what the star looks like, or this is how the star is named in a particular survey, the 2-mass survey. So, Earth's cousin, not excited about that name either, but But hey, but they got it. They understood the assignment, Planet Gaia. So, but yeah, just really cool. I just really love this. And it got me thinking. One of the things that I wanted to do was to do a series, series on exoplanet systems. And now I'm wondering if I could somehow incorporate this into that YouTube series of creating a planetary car, or basically like a trading card system, or a set of trading cards for each of the planets that have been discovered and confirmed. I don't know if there's enough information out there for all of them. I think they would definitely have to come in sets like Pokemon cards. There would be Exoplanet Silver, there would be Exoplanet Platinum, that sort of thing. I don't know, maybe someone can actually invent a game surrounding this whole thing. But I'm also thinking of, I would probably have to talk to someone in the university level, but selling these, actually printing these out, or providing a link to a website that will print these out, and with the money going to the observatory, where these are created by GMU students. So I would only put on sale, I would only offer those images, those posters that were created by GMU students. Granted, I'm going to have one of them is a PDF, one of them is a PDF, which interesting that's become a YouTube safe synonym for something, for a certain type of person. But it's PDF, so I don't know if I can convert that. And also the other one is a Word document of all things. But anyway, I should have Mel on one day. Melodic? Yeah, I would love to have Melodic on. Actually, I can try to sort of revive the Coffee and Science very early on, or like a year or so ago, or even longer. I used to do this very short-lived series on Sunday mornings where I would interview a scientist, someone who actually works in the scientific field. The idea was I would ask them questions, I would humanize, or I would attempt to humanize them. I would basically be like, hey, this was geared towards mainly towards science skeptics, but hopefully would be entertaining for others. But for them to see that we're human, we're not evil, we're not satanic, we don't have an agenda, that we are just like anybody else. And so maybe I can get Mel on. I had Dr. Clive Wells on. I had my buddy Dr. Victor Riqueza on. I'm trying to think of who else I interviewed. I'm pretty confident I don't have PhD Tony, which is a drastic oversight. But I know I had like 4 or 5 of those. Anyway, so I might bring that series back. Judy, you like that series? Then yeah, I'll think about it, because there's a Melodic I can bring in. There is obviously PhD Tony I could ask. There is Professor Phil Bell I could ask. There is, I had the name and then I don't have the name. There's what is her name? Now I feel really bad because I don't remember her name. JCat? JCat? I think it's JCat. Anyway, I'm on her server. I know she's an astronomer and she has dealt with, or at least she teaches about exoplanets. And then I can get over myself and actually ask certain colleagues of mine that I still regularly deal with. I could ask them if they want to be on that. I feel weird asking, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Yeah. So, but yeah. So yeah, that's an idea. That's definitely an idea. So, but yeah, I really had to share that because I love these things. They are way cooler than I anticipated them being, and I'm just really happy because the students really seem to be engaged with it. Well, at least a good number of the students seem to be engaged with it. Getting 30 students engaged in your class, if you can do it, you are a far better instructor than I am. I find it is acceptable if I can get about half. I am over the moon if I can get like 3/4 of people actually engaged in the class. So this was somewhere in between those two. So yeah. So that takes care of the exoplanet part of the title. But actually, before I get into that, because the next thing I want to talk about is kind of related, which again, I feel nervous about talking about, because I know that a number of my regular audience members, I think, or channel members, aren't really interested in God, don't really have a great opinion about Christians, but I'm going to do it anyway. Which again, I find to be, I don't like feeling that way. I don't like being nervous about talking about this, but anyway, I actually want to just really briefly. So I'm really into the Little Book series. So I've read the Little Book of Exoplanets. That's actually one of the textbooks that I use for that particular, for the Exoplanet book. The Little Book of Aliens. I'm currently finishing up the Little Book of Cosmology, and I think on my shelf I have the Little Book of Black Holes. I think the series encompasses all sorts of disciplines, but obviously astronomy is where I'm getting at. This one I'm not as enthused about because this author, Liam Page, who is the James S. McDonald Distinguished University Professor of Physics at Princeton, he was real serious about the Little Book part of this. Usually the other two that I have are almost double the size of this. And this suffers from it because this is such a, in a way, such a complex idea. Cosmology is such a complex subject. I think it could have used a better treatment, a more detailed treatment than what it got. But what I want to read you is a passage because, with people that I've talked to with flat earthers and science skeptics, they're always claiming that science makes definitive claims, that this is true, we have proven this, that we know the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and what have you. And I push back against that as much as I possibly can. And I wanted to illustrate that this is that idea of things being proven in science is not universally accepted within the scientific community. So, and this actually shows a little bit about how theory is viewed, a theoretical model is viewed in a scientific framework. So Page writes, the standard model of cosmology is so successful that it is now a foundation from which we can look for departures. So with that first sentence, what he is stating is that the most useful part of the standard model of cosmology is that it provides a foundation. It is the beginning and not the end. It is not the period at the end of the sentence about cosmology. It provides us a foundation from which to build up from. So, and the second part of that, we can look for departures. He is admitting that our standard model is probably wrong, that we do not either have, it's either incomplete or that it has that it's wrong because, again, we can look for departures. He continues, though more precise measurements of the CMB, the cosmic microwave background, we will learn, for example, the total mass of neutrinos. We might find that there are remnant gravitational waves from the birth of the universe that now pervade the universe. We could perhaps find that the cosmological constant isn't constant, or that general relativity needs modification. And I'm going to repeat that for those of you in the back row. He states, or that general relativity needs modification. So this is a Princeton professor, scientist, making it very clear that he is open to the possibility that general relativity is not the final word on that subject, on the subject of gravity. And finally, he continues, perhaps the universe isn't quite geometrically flat. Perhaps the fluctuations have a slightly different form and spectrum than what we now measure. And he ends it by saying, or perhaps a new particle in the early universe will reveal itself. And he ends by stating, before we touch, or to be able to determine any of these, we need more precise data. So that indicates that science is driven by the data. We can come up with all of these really fancy ideas, but unless we have data to support those ideas, they really aren't useful to us. They aren't really practical. They don't really have much weight into determining what reality actually is. Little Book of Flat Earth. Maybe I'll write that. Maybe I will write the Little Book of Flat Earth. I don't know if I'd ever get published. It would have to be self-published. But maybe I would. I could write that. So I say all that, I highlight all that because, again, there is this pervading attitude that the things that you find on Google, the things that you Google, the things that you read from popular science, that these are absolutes sent on high from the grand poobah on the mountain, carved in stone, sent down to be regurgitated, to be memorized by folks like myself, and then regurgitated to the masses. That is not the case. We as a scientific community understand that we are at best describing the most likely scenario. And on top of that, that description of reality, that scenario, is incomplete. We do not have a full picture of what's going on. So, God. All right. So, as many of you might know, I have a cross. I'm Christian. Haha. Spoiler alert. I have a cross tattooed on my hand. So, it's pretty obvious where my heart lies. And every year, every semester, I start my astronomy classes with the image of the pale blue dot, which is an image of the Earth taken from Voyager when Voyager is roughly at the distance of Pluto. It is somewhat. I actually have it up here on my wall as a poster. And Carl Sagan wrote a book with the same title. And in the first chapter, he has I think, a very poetic paragraph that ends with, I have to paraphrase it, that the Earth is but a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, which seems to lead to the implication that we are insignificant. And so during that first period or first class, I talk about how I interpret that, excuse me, I interpret that very, very differently. Howdy, Tony. I was just mentioning you. I was talking about reviving my Coffee and Science podcast or series where I would interview scientists, and I would ask basically questions about, how did you get into the subject? What is your educational background? things like that. So people don't think that we are some kind of shill for the government, for them. So, and I was noting that I had not interviewed you, and that was a glaring absence in that series. So I'm debating whether or not I can get that back up and running. If I am, I hope that you would be my first guest on the next one of those episodes. Anyway, getting back. So I talk about Pale Blue Dot, talk about the significance, and in that, I mentioned that I am a Christian. All right. That is the only time I mention my faith or faith at all in any of my classes. Just that one time, I basically run a flag up the flagpole and then take it back down again. That's it. So if any of you are out there that think that I am putting forth a Christian agenda or pushing my religion on anyone or really harping about it anyway, I do not. But I do let people know that I am. Because sometimes I actually get, hey, honored, awesome. It's not what I get from it all if humanity is in that photograph. Every thought, exactly, every thought. I cannot think of a better example of just how significant the human race is than the pale blue dot. That all of human existence is on that dot in the vastness of the universe. Or as I think of it, the vastness of God's creation. His children are on that point of dust. And thank you for being honored. So so occasionally I get folks that come up and ask me about my faith. And of course they ask me, how do I reconcile it with science and all that? And I tell them that, asking two sides or the same sort of question, just two sides of it. Science is asking the physical mechanisms behind which the universe was created and through which it operates, whereas religion, faith, that asks the question of why was the universe created in context to the human soul, and asks moral questions about how we should operate within the context of that physical reality. But this time, I actually had a discussion with two of my students that was very, very fun. They were Christians. They're going to a seminar, so they seem to be very devout in their faith and very open about their faith. But they also I was speaking with the male for the majority, and he accepts the universe is 13.8 billion years old. I think he accepts evolution. And when I talk about the Earth, he also is of the opinion that it actually reaffirms his faith in God by looking at these sorts of things, that astronomy does that. I actually might be on his podcast talking about how astronomy how does astronomy sort of inform my faith? Effectively, how does it affect what I believe in and what I think about God, that sort of thing. So I had a very, very brief, sadly, because I had to go somewhere else, but conversation about what that means. What about astronomy? What can it tell us? And what can it tell me about my relationship with God? And I had a point. Where was that point? I talked about intelligent design, and he is he would fall into the intelligent design category, or group. He's a business major he's a business major, so he's not an astronomer. But he believes in the strong anthropic principle. Well, he believes in the anthropic principle. He believes that there is a designer, and that he believes, I think, that through his design, one can get to know him better. I think he does reject the idea that the universe was created for the sole purpose of proving God's existence, which I do not believe in. But God is in there somewhere, essentially, is where I'm going with that. Tony says, at the same time, assuming it is the pale blue dot, emphasizes just how much care we should take of the only haven of life we are aware of, and how much we have to lose if we are not careful of it. Yeah, and that actually, we actually kind of talked about that as well, in that, for example, science is telling us that the Earth will become uninhabitable at some point, where either climate change will effectively eradicate the human species, or inevitably the sun's going to get too hot and the Earth is going to become barren and basically a burnt cinder. And he was saying, his interpretation was something along of, and again, this is very brief, so I may be misinterpreting what he was saying, but he was basically saying, that would be the end of days, that essentially that would be the time that he would ascend into heaven. My statement to him was, I don't really think about it in those terms. For me, the idea of when the apocalypse is going to happen, when Revelation occurs, honestly, the book of Revelation to me is kind of a fever dream. It's bonkers. Anyone out there, if you are truly honest, I don't care how literally you want to take the Bible, the book of Revelation is fucking bonkers. So, respectfully. But yeah, I don't really worry about that so much. What I worry about is, again, as a Christian, looking at the dust mote, we are its shepherds. We are the shepherd of the earth. It tells us in Genesis that we should be the shepherds of the earth. And my concern with climate change is that climate change is going to affect the most vulnerable populations the most and first. And so as a Christian, when it comes to the morality of the topic of climate change, I feel that humanity, obviously we need to address climate change. We need to make sure that we have to ensure that it doesn't become runaway and basically just wreck everything. But I think we really need to concentrate on how the climate change is already affecting marginalized societies, societies that are basically impoverished. And I don't know you, so I'm not going to accept your phone call. Marginalized, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, societies, basically impoverished societies, that sort of thing. And so as a Christian, and hopefully other Christians feel the same way, is that with climate change, this presents actually a moral problem because of the fact that now humanity is the direct cause for suffering due to environmental causes. And so it is our obligation to do whatever we can to mitigate the cause of climate change, but also make sure that any sort of mitigation helps them, basically lifts them up more so than everybody else, because they're the ones that need it the most. So yeah, I was fucking really, really excited about having that conversation with the students, and that's why I bring up my faith in the first class, first class, because I want to have those conversations. So far, I've not had a conversation with someone who was an atheist. No one has come up to me and talked to me about essentially, how can you believe in God if science says this and all this in a challenging sort of way. I haven't had that. I have had a Muslim come up to me and speak to me about, and he wants to also talk to me later about the interplay between faith and science and astronomy, which I think is very cool because I know about that much about Islamic tradition, Islamic faith, the actual theology of Islam. Right? Basically, my knowledge of Islam as a religion amounts to what little I could get from a friend of mine, an old friend of mine back in the day, and what I learn about on the news, which, I don't trust because, depending on the news source, very varied. So I really hope he comes back and we can actually have a conversation, mainly so that I can ask him, about Islamic morality and that sort of thing. Speaking of students, another segue. I was planning on putting this in a short, and I probably will. Maybe I'll cut this out and put it in a short. I don't know. So one of my more enthusiastic students, it was talking to me today, and the conversation basically got to the point where he was like, we're talking about space travel. And there might actually be a weird silver lining to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Because what he told me was when the ticket price goes down to around 10 grand, he's going to go to the bank and take out a loan. He's serious about this. He's going to go out in the bank, take a loan, and take one of his relatives. He was hesitant to say which one of his relatives. Take his relative, take them into space so that they could see that the Earth was in fact not flat. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, flat Earth is not dead. I didn't really get to ask, explore more into that with him to see just where his family member gets his information, whether or not they get it from TikTok or YouTube or a part of any kind of online community like with Facebook. But it is the first time that I have talked to someone from at the university who has had firsthand contact with someone who thinks the Earth is flat. So, one of my students is directly related to one. And it's scary. It's honestly quite scary because, again, I don't know what their presence in flat Earth is, but I've always been very curious about, people speak of the, what is the term? Something like vocal minority, where a movement seems to be larger than it is because the people who believe in it are very vocal. Silent majority, that's it, silent majority. I wonder if there is a silent majority within flat Earth. Are there a lot more people who think the Earth is flat than we understand simply because they just don't talk about it? They don't advertise this to other people, or at least not broadly. If this is just something that just happens to be out there, and we are drastically underestimating the amount of misunderstanding there is out there. I was talking with somebody on Discord, or typing at someone with Discord, who is very obsessed with gender. I don't know what that's all about, but I made some comment that seemed to allude to him, or that alluded, or rather accused, as it were, him of being a flat earther. And he's like, no, that's right. I said that I was going to go indoctrinate the next generation in the heliocentric lie. And his response was, the heliocentric system is not a lie. I'm like, wait a minute. You don't believe we went to the moon? And he said, well, there are a lot of normies out there who don't believe that we went to the moon. And I was like, fair. Long before I knew that flat earthers existed, I knew that people didn't think the moon landing was real. I knew they existed. So it makes me wonder just how prevalent these ideas are among the general population, not just in my country, but in just globally. Like for example, countries that are, that do not have, I don't know, robust social media presence, that these people, that people of I don't know if, hard to say, like with people in Afghanistan, I don't think the people in Afghanistan are spending a lot of their time online. I could be very, very wrong about this. This could just be Western American bias, but I'm thinking that people in Afghanistan have other things that they need to be worrying about than being online. So I'm curious as to, with those people who don't have a large social media or a large interconnectedness, how much these ideas exist within them. Tony says, I don't like the term heliocentric. My understanding of heliocentric suggests the sun is the center of the universe, and it isn't. Bingo. I don't like it either. But they keep saying it. And I've said this, I may have even said this online at some point, is that I don't like the idea of the heliocentric model, because the cosmological model is way larger than that. And yes, it somewhat implies that the sun is in fact the center of the universe. And Copernicus believed just that the sun was in fact the center of the universe. He put the Earth in orbit, but the universe was still centered on a point within our own solar system. So yeah, calling our current understanding of space, planets, and so forth, the heliocentric model bugs me, because it is in no way fucking accurate. But yeah. All right. So I've been rambling for, 50 minutes now. I'm probably going to sign off, because in 3 hours I have another lecture to give, and I need to go, eat and chill out for a while. But they do use the term heliocentric, and they need pushback. It's an idiotic misconception. I agree. And again, to me, it illustrates a lack of understanding of the complexity, or the actual cosmological model that we have, the Big Bang model that we have. Because one of the problems that I have with any sort of heliocentric or geocentric model, this idea that the Earth is in a primary position in the universe, be it either orbiting around the center of the universe or is the center of the universe, doesn't make sense within the Big Bang cosmology, because the Earth is not as old as the universe. So why would the center of the universe exist in a space where nothing was for the majority of its existence? So for, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, as far as we can determine at this point. The Earth is around 4.5 billion years old. So roughly speaking, for 9 billion years, nothing existed in this space. There was really nothing here except probably just molecular hydrogen. So how is it? Thank you, Coco. Been nice hanging out with y'all too. So how does one rectify that? How does one rectify that we are the center of the universe, when it is clear there was a universe prior to our existence? So yes, heliocentrism, if they want to call it a model, it really should be called the Big Bang model, not the heliocentric model. But I think there are things that need to be done in these conversations prior to really even getting to that point. I may mention, just so that I can fill this out as a full hour, I will continue to babble on and say, I'm reading a book, and I've mentioned this in a couple of previous streams. I'm reading a book, The Copernican Revolution by Thomas Kuhn, Kuhn. I'm just going to say Kuhn until someone corrects me. In comparison to his book that describes scientific revolutions as a whole, his philosophy on scientific revolutions, the Copernican Revolution text, way fun, way easier to read. Lambda CDM, another way of putting it. Yes. If you don't like Big Bang model, Lambda CDM is the most precise way of labeling our current model. But the Copernican Revolution, the text, way easier to read. He is very, I love Kuhn. I actually prefer reading him over Popper. His ideas on scientific revolutions are fascinating. And this is particularly talking about the Copernican Revolution, and he brings in that essentially there was a philosophical change. There had to be a philosophical change in order for Copernicus to exist. Essentially, there had to be wow, I should know this. I was just reading it. Scholasticism had to become prominent in that you had to have the development of universities. You had to have the development of a lecturer lecturing to a group of students and having those students engage and actually talk about this and to investigate the things that were taken in. Basically, to not simply regurgitate what had previously been found. And without that movement towards scholasticism, then the Copernican Revolution would not have been possible. And it's fascinating because he's going through the evolution of effectively the paradigm, as he puts it, up to and through Copernicus. And right now I'm in the Copernican model. Effectively, he's going over the first book of De Revolutionibus. Apparently, very much like Ptolemy, the Almagest. The Almagest is basically unreadable in the sense that unless you are really, really keen and really love geometry, the Almagest is unreadable because it's just a technical document. And apparently De Revolutionibus, the first chapter is meant as a sort of a layman's or, it's written in it's prose. It's not, there's no equations. There's nothing, not really, there's not a lot of diagrams. It's written in plain English or whatever language he was speaking. Italian? Copernicus was Italian? I don't know. Whatever. Not mathematics. But the rest of the book apparently is unreadable to the lay person, which Kuhn says, oddly enough, states that because it was so unreadable, that actually allowed the ideas of Copernicus to remain as unchallenged as they were for long enough for people like Kepler to come around and actually develop it into a proper model. That if people had known specifically what Copernicus was doing or what Copernicus was suggesting, that they would have been like, whoa, hold on. No, this isn't working. But it's fascinating to me because the same arguments that were being made about cosmology, about the Earth, about the universe, we hear today with flat Earth. Like in the De Revolutionibus, he actually has a section in the first book that where he has to argue that the Earth is a sphere. This is 15 some odd, like mid 1500s. It's still such a prevalent idea of the Earth being flat that he has to defend the Earth being a sphere. And he basically gives the same arguments that that Aristotle gave. But, the critiques of Copernicus, the critiques of why the heliocentric, why the Earth could not be the center of the universe is also kind of from Aristotle. The idea that if the Earth were to move, then we would feel it. Birds would fly out of the sky. Wind would, clouds would just whiz by, and if you launch something in the air, it would not fall back down to the same point because the Earth would rotate around it. And so Copernicus had to, in De Revolutionibus, he had to present arguments, logical arguments, as to why, no, the Earth can move. And not just, and what's also interesting to me, I should know that should not have come as a surprise, but he posited not that the Earth, when he said the Earth moved, he went all in. He said that the Earth rotates, that the Earth revolves, and that the Earth actually precesses. So he describes in his text the motions of those three movements of the Earth. So he goes all in with it. But effectively, howdy, Clive. Actually, should be tailing off on this, but the arguments that were made by philosophers of the day echo what flat earthers are saying now about how it is physically impossible for the Earth to move. Obviously, most of these folks believe that the Earth is a sphere, or at least the more prevalent ones were. But again, there was enough of a pushback against the Earth being a sphere that Copernicus had to argue it, had to put forth a case that the Earth was a sphere in his text. With Kuhn, what is also interesting is that he does not believe that Copernicus, pardon me, I'm geeking out. He does not believe that that book, that text, was revolutionary in itself. The text was revolutionary in how it opened the door to questioning the position of the Earth, the movement of the Earth. Because when you look at when you look at that first book, he is still doing what drives me crazy about people who are skeptical. Will Duffy comes to mind, where Will Duffy says he has to be logically convinced that the universe is of a certain way. That's not how science works. Science works by the data. You cannot rhetorically determine the reality of the universe. You cannot simply just philosophize that the universe must be a certain way because of certain philosophical conditions, a belief in God or what have you. And Copernicus still does that. He still feels the need to come up with logical justifications for why the Earth moves the way it does, and his justifications aren't great. They're kind of specious. They're not very convincing, and in times they're actually counter to one another, particularly in terms of how he picks and chooses what bits of Aristotelian philosophy he adheres to and which ones he goes out. Aliens are going to be super confused when they show up to overthrow our leaders, and we're all happy and offer to help. Yeah, or we just deny that they exist. We claim that God didn't create you, so therefore you don't exist, so therefore you must be some kind of CGI psyop of, I don't know, the liberal elite or whomever there is, or the PDF files as I'm seeing circulated around the internet. So sorry, I didn't mean to get too far into the talking about that book. I really, really like it. Highly recommend it to anybody. It's pretty easy reading. And so, yeah, I could geek out on that for hours. I would really actually love to have a conversation with folks about the philosophy of science, how science progresses, and how certain things had to fall into place, certain philosophical things that fall into place in order for revolutions to occur. I know I have talked about this because I did a stream a few days ago, maybe last week, where I'm starting to challenge myself in that I've always had the position that worldviews are anathema to science. But I'm thinking that may not be accurate, because it was a worldview that helped prompt Copernicus to go where he went. There was a practical reason, which is Copernicus, basically the calendar sucked. There was no way to come up with a robust calendar based on the Ptolemaic system of planets. There was no way to determine when spring was based on stellar position or planetary position, given the Ptolemaic model of calculating things. He definitively ruled out that this was in fact not because of mistranslations, but because the system itself didn't work. So that was one of his motivations. But the other motivation was philosophical. He looked at the Ptolemaic system and he said this violates Aristotelian thought. This violates the idea of the Earth being at the center of things, or something being at the center of things. It also only pays lip service to uniform circular motion, that sort of thing. So it was a worldview that prompted Copernicus to go in the direction that he went. And so I don't know, is that still the case? Are we still allowing ourselves to be motivated by a philosophy of some sort, such as the cosmological principle, which, when everything is said and done, is an assumption? So are we still, am I wrong, or do I need to kind of walk back my belief in that a worldview cannot exist or should not exist in order for science to proceed? So I'd love to have that kind of conversation with folks somewhere else, either on Discord or on someone's channel or on my channel. Probably someone else's channel, because I suck at actually scheduling things. So I find these sorts of conversations far more fascinating than trying to convince someone that seismological data does in fact prove or highly support the notion that the Earth is spherical. Trying to get people to see that the Earth is a sphere through interpretation of data, it's never interested me. I've never really cared about it. But like I said, I'm much more interested in the philosophy of these sorts of things, why they believe the way that they do, and how can we look at can flat Earth and science skepticism actually be useful for scientific inquiry, modern scientific inquiry? Are there lessons to be learned there that we can apply to making science better moving forward? I think we all have worldviews, but we must be willing to change them if the evidence is against them. I agree. And as I've said, we're all human. We're all biased. There's no way for us not to be biased. we are all fallible in one way or another. So the issue really becomes, how do we as a scientist divorce ourselves from that worldview while we are doing science? Because I've put forward in the past that one has to do it, that one should, that is a requirement for good science for us to do that. Because so often a worldview can lead us astray. But I'm also wondering, can it lead us down the right path? So if it can lead us down the right path, is it appropriate? Can it be appropriate to have a worldview if it in fact pushes us in the right direction? Seismological evidence is woefully underused against flat Earth. Yes, because a lot of folks do not understand geophysics. So, oh, that reminds me, if Tony is still around. Tony, have you heard of a guy named Stefan Burns? By any stretch? He is a YouTuber who has hundreds of thousands of subs, and he claims to be a geophysicist. And while he is not a flat earther, I don't think, he is a woo peddler. What got me onto him was he had a series of videos, and it's been a while, so I'd have to go check again, but he had a series of videos where he claimed that Comet 3I Atlas would have effects on humanity, effectively that it would influence the sun, and the sun would change its frequencies, which would then change our frequencies, and stuff would happen. He's a frequency woo peddler. So I don't know if you would, and he is very confident in calling himself a geophysicist as a way of validating his belief system. So I was wondering if you were aware of this dude in any way whatsoever. I was really hoping that we'd be talking about Artemis 2 this weekend. Hey, I can talk about Artemis 2 this weekend. That's not a problem. I can't talk about it launching, but, you know, stuff happens. I'd rather they postpone the launch till March, and then have the thing blow up and kill, 4 people? We really don't need a repeat of Apollo 1. So I'm content for it to be pushed back, because it's one of the things that NASA, for better or for worse, one of the things about NASA that I personally like is that they are careful. They check and recheck to make sure that things do not go catastrophically wrong. Obviously, things have gone catastrophically wrong, but in terms of the number of successes that we've had versus those cataclysmic events, I think NASA has a pretty good track record. Far better than SpaceX, for example, where they are real good at launching stuff, not so good at landing stuff. At least the Starship or Spaceship or whatever the hell they call that thing. So yeah, that's another thing about fuck Elon and SpaceX. The philosophy behind the commercial satellite, commercial exploration industry is, in my opinion, morally repugnant, in that they think that, again, not to get too far into it, but effectively the problem they have with NASA is that they are too cautious, that the reason why NASA, it costs so much to launch things into space is because of safety checks, of just the bureaucracy it takes to get through, to get these things in motion. The fact that, you have to test at every single major stage. They would rather just, fuck it, just throw it up there, see what happens, and then move on from there, which I think is extremely dangerous when we start talking about people, when these vehicles are actually staffed in any way, when there are human lives at stake, I find the current industry's viewpoint on this to be problematic at best. Howdy, Phil Bell. Yet another person I need to interview at some point for my coffee and science thing. Delay it to March, Spock's birthday? No, delay it to March, my birthday. Yeah, that's right. Leonard Nimoy may be older than I am. Obviously he is no longer with us. But March 26th is not his birthday. It's my birthday. That's right. You heard it here first. So hopefully that would be very cool if Artemis 2 would launch on March 26th. That would be pretty damn awesome if you're going to do it. Starlink is screwing up astrophotography, and it's only getting worse. Yes. I want to do more about advocating against or advocating for policy. Policies be in place for satellites. And as it happens, I need to get back to this, but if you want to become a channel member, I do put out members, not a lot, but I do put out member-only videos. And generally speaking, they are insights to the observatory, but also insights into the Landau, the NASA mission that we have here at George Mason. I'm peripherally a part of the Landau mission, which is a mission to build a satellite. It's not going to be built here. Parts of it are going to be built here, but it's going to be put together on our SciTech campus. And we're going to launch the sucker, and it's going to shoot laser beams down onto the Earth. I think they're actually Hindu laser beams, so they're going to be slightly different than the whole Jewish laser beams, but they're going to be instrumental, pun intended, in order to calibrate our current way of determining the brightnesses of astronomical objects. But a part of that is George Mason has the other thing that I want to do videos on, but I have to figure out exactly how much I can say, is George Mason has this grand challenge initiatives. So there are these big science ideas that they want to fund. And so we are currently in the process, or people that I know, again, I'm only peripherally a part of this, we have put forward a proposal, and that proposal is to create the Mason Space Institute. And that ultimately that institute would be geared towards three. Let me see if I can get all three. One is the continuation of satellite missions. Essentially, we would, beyond Landau, we would help develop additional satellites to be put into space and to be used for scientific research. Another big part is data visualization. How can we take these massive data stores that we now have and actually create visuals that will help not only inform the scientists, but also inform the public as to what's really going on? You know, we have data that's basically just numbers, not exactly the sexiest thing in the world. So, and we have plots, not quite as more sexy than numbers, but not as sexy. So how do we actually visualize, how can we actually visualize the data so that it can help us form an intuition as to what's going on physically, or at least also, and not only that, but also inform the public as to what's going on effectively. So do they have sharks? No, we are not planning on sending up a shark with the satellite. As far as I'm aware, again, I'm not in on the engineering details of it. So, but I have not heard any reports of sharks being involved in this. But or very angry sea bass. But I say all this because to Lindsay's point, satellites are becoming, particularly mega constellations like Starlink, they are polluting the night sky for astronomers. In that, when we take images, more and more often we're going to see satellite trails through those images, which at the moment we can't get rid of. Unless the satellite is along a row or along a column, we don't have a numerical way of getting rid of it. So if the satellite happens to go by or, on our object of interest, then we're SOL in terms of that image. We can't use it. And it's only going to get worse. So one of the things that, and I think it's a major pillar, I think the third thing is actually policy. We're going to partner with the government, the Shar School of Business and Government, Policy and Government. They gave me a mug. Very good people, because they gave me a mug. We're going to partner with them because the Science Institute is also going to be involved in outreach, specifically government outreach. Well, outreach to corporations so that we can actually get our students jobs, but also in government outreach so that we can help inform policy. Because right now the satellite industry is the Wild West. There are very, very few regulations in place with satellites in terms of how many you can put up there, what you can use them for, what happens when they die and fall on someone's head, that sort of thing. Never believe something until Rob officially denies it. All right, words to live by. I have a list if they are interested. Don't know what that's, Ro, I don't know what you're referring to there, but if you have a lot of data and you can tell an algorithm how to use that data, AI will definitely be your friend. Yes. So when students come to me, and particularly young student, freshmen, sophomore, or even high school students, they come to me and they ask me, how do I prepare myself for, grad school, getting a job, future things? I'm like, well, you're most likely going to want to double major. You're going to want to major in physics, not major in astronomy, as it happens, because when you're in grad school, the grad school is going to teach you all the astronomy you're ever going to need to know. You need to have a strong physics background in order to understand what is happening astronomically. So major in physics and then double major in either mathematics or computer science. Even if you want to be an observationalist, even if you're not interested in developing theories, then I would definitely just double major into computer science, because as Dr. Phil, Professor Phil has stated, big data, machine learning, that's going to become astronomy's bread and butter in the next decade, in basically going forward, is that we are now getting into missions like, for example, the Vera Rubin telescope is going to be scanning the night sky, the entire sky it can see in the Northern Hemisphere, every 3 days. It's going to create, I think, petabytes worth of data, either every day or every week. So the amount of data, sheer amount of data that this satellite or this telescope, this one telescope, is going to create in its 10-year mission is incomprehensible. And so there's just so much data that no grad student can put, we don't have enough grad student eyeballs to put onto it, even if we had a better NASA budget. So we're going to have to rely on AI in order to look through this data and actually figure out what's going on. And so If there happens to be anyone, or if you know anyone who is interested in astronomy as a profession, they're going to need to code. You're going to need to know how to program. And more specifically, if you really want to be of a hot item, I guess, is knowing machine learning, I think is going to get you in the right doors. That's really going to open up your job prospects for it. The lasers pointed at the Earth. Yes. So I told one of the students to submit his application to AI to see how it might be improved. It meant I didn't end effectively correcting his application, which would have been a problem if he didn't get in. Okay. Oh, it won't be on my birthday, March. It'll be March 6th or March 11th. Well, something else might break. It might be cloudy. Let's be less morbid about it and say it could be cloudy, could be really, really cold. So it could get pushed back to March 26th. I can hope. I can dream. So, yeah, AI. We're stuck with it. I don't know. As I said at the very beginning of the stream, I had an assignment today where I instructed them. I told them to use AI, which felt there was a little ick. I will admit that from a professional point of view, from an educational point of view, there was a little ick. But I'm going to have to get over it because AI is here. It's only going to get more developed. And we can't, as instructors, as academics, we cannot ignore that it exists. So we need to, I tell students that to be considered literate in science or engineering, you have to know to code. Yes, coding is essential at this point. It's effectively you need to know how to code in the same way you need to know how to do a triple integral, solve a triple integral, how to solve a differential equation. It is just as vital as that. Even if you don't want to go into theory or heavily into theory, knowing how to code is an absolute necessity. It would have been a nice present. Okay. What else do I want to say? Fuck ice. There we go. There's that. I'm thinking about actually doing a marathon stream related to what's going on in Minnesota, because what's going on in Minnesota is wrong. I will end it out. Again, I'm rambling, so apologies. You know how they say there are 7 deadly sins? I think there are 8. And I think the 8th is hypocrisy. Because that is what annoys me the most about my fellow Christians, some of my fellow Christians, is just the blatant hypocrisy in how they view how they view life. How can you claim that this is a Christian nation when we deliberately target, arrest, detain, and deport some of the most vulnerable in our population? How is that? How do you reconcile that with the teachings of Christ? You can't. There is no way to do that. So to in one breath say that we are a Christian nation, and the next breath basically do mass immigrations, and then on top of that, of course, the murdering of U.S. citizens, the murdering of anyone because detainees have also been killed in this whole shenanigan. So anyone dying because we need to get the brown people out of our country is not Christian at all. There is no defense of it from a Christian standpoint. If you're not a Christian, I still think you would probably feel that it is morally wrong to kill people during a deportation. You probably think that, hopefully, you think that deporting immigrants is also wrong. Yeah. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. I am doing some masking, I will say, but yeah, I'm healthy. Although sinuses are not my friend right now, and yeah, having problems with sinuses, vertigo, that sort of thing. But regardless, thank you for asking. Thank you for saying. So, yeah, I don't. When it comes to the current administration, it just gets worse. To me, it just gets worse and worse. And I don't tend to get political on my channel. I don't want to get political on my channel for a number of different reasons. I will put out the disclaimer: anything on my channel that I have stated is my opinion. It does not reflect the opinions or views of my employer. It's the blatant hypocrisy of one saying that we are a godly nation, and then in the next breath advocating for the subjugation of vulnerable people, of advocating for effectively eliminating empathy in really any policy decision whatsoever, in not stepping up. And, I put it on Epstein. This is a joke, or this is an exaggeration, but I think I am starting to see more pictures of Jeffrey Epstein than I have fucking cat pictures in my phone. And that is a problem, because nothing is fucking happening. They went after the low fruit of Ghislaine Maxwell. Obviously, sure, her ass is in jail, but not jail enough. She's kind of in, from my understanding, she's really in just a really shitty resort at the moment. But they did that, and then that's nothing. We get documents. Okay, great. Documents. Redacted documents. So we can, at best, we can say, oh yeah, Clinton, he hung around Epstein a lot. He was on his plane. Okay, great. Bill Gates apparently was also a good friend of Epstein. Great. The guy was a sex trafficker. The man was doing illegal shit with underage women. These people, and these people were friendly with him. So it's not a huge leap to believe that they were at least aware or even complicit or customers of his services. So, again, as a Christian, I left the church because of PDF files, of the way that the church dealt with PDF files. This is similar to this. This is pretty much on par, or pretty much on a similar level to how the church was dealing with that. Is that, again, We are, according to the administration, we are a Christian nation, and yet we are doing fuck all to find, uncover, and dismantle and hold people accountable for a sex trafficking operation. How the fuck is that possible? Again, I'm looking at this from the eyes of a Christian and looking at my fellow Christians. I mean, obviously, just at a fundamental base level, these people should be held accountable. These people should be found. It should be a priority to find these folks and hold them accountable. But again, if you're stating that this country is a Christian nation, then you are, to me, you are even more responsible to get this done. It is even more on you to get this done because it is so vile to Christian morality. And again, not saying it's not vile to other moralities, saying just from a Christian standpoint, it's vile. And so, yeah. I am one breaking news away from walking directly into the ocean. Yeah. I just don't know about it anymore. And I really do need to go. I don't know how we got here. I could put some guesses as to how we got here. More of how American politics was about power. Always has been. I think any politics is about power. And obviously those in power want to stay in power. But there's always been this, there's understanding that there are lines that do not get crossed. That there are ethical boundaries, there are moral boundaries that one does not sacrifice or one does not break in order to obtain or retain power. And those things, those boundaries are now degraded to a large extent. Like Trump is talking about nationalizing elections. I don't know how that would be even possible, but his yes men will let it happen. If there is a way for him to do it, Congress will not stop him. Obviously, there's the midterm elections and all that, but I have zero faith in the Democratic Party to stop the Republic. Even if they had a supermajority in both Congress and the Senate, they would still find some way to fumble the ball and let the Republicans do whatever the hell they want to do. The Republicans would exploit some technicality somewhere to get what they want, either get what they want done or rather get what the Democrats want not done, to stop them from doing what they want to do. So I don't know where it ends. Obviously Trump is going to, I find it almost impossible for Trump to have a third term. I really don't see that happening. But God help us if Vance becomes the next president. That, I really don't like J.D. Vance. I actually have respect for Trump. I know. The respect that I have for Trump is because of his resiliency, is that he gives no fucks. He has no shame, and he has no shame. He will bribe, he will steal, he will cajole, and it's working. And for that, I got to respect his hustle. I got to respect the game. J.D. Vance has no backbone, has absolutely no character whatsoever other than dickhead. That's his character. Dickhead. But he could very well get into power. And where does this end? He's going to, any Republican successor to Trump is going to effectively see what Trump has done, and they're going to continue to try to push the limits. They're going to continue to try to dismantle the levers of government, or the hurdles of government that are preventing them from doing whatever the fuck they want to do. Come on, blood clot, we're all counting on you. Honestly, here again, no respect for Vance, because if I were J.D. Vance, I would be behind the scenes pushing the 25th Amendment. I think it's the 25th. I would work to have Trump called incompetent. I would lay in and basically try as hard as I could and as backhanded as I could to have him removed from the presidency because of mental incompetence. I would say that he certainly has the case for it. He would get, I think, a lot of Democratic support for it. Put himself as president, makes it easier for him to become president next time. So he's not even doing that. He's the Diet Coke of evil. He's just a dickhead. Like, Trump is evil. Stephen Miller is war crimes, Nuremberg evil. J.D. Vance is, he's the, God, I don't know. He's the pond scum of evil. But anyway, you've become a hot commodity, single female EU citizenship. It's not the only reason. Those are not the only reasons you're a hot commodity, but yeah, I can see that. Actually, I wonder how many marriages are because of Trump. That's an interesting content. Problem with Vance is he's evil rather than stupid. No, I don't agree, actually. He's not evil. He's evil, yes. But he's spineless. He has no principles. He does not stand for anything. Like, Trump stands for his own self-interest. He advocates for, he goes after his own self-interest. Oh, and by the way, you can say goodbye to the Kennedy Center. That shit's going to get torn down. The Kennedy Center is going to go the same way as the East Wing. I'm putting money on it right now. Trump has the principle, has the strength of character to go after things. Vance does not. Vance may well be playing the long game. The problem with that is that if he continues to be as spineless as he is, I think Rubio actually has a better shot at the presidency than he does, which actually may be a better thing, because I actually don't think Rubio is as evil as Vance is, or certainly as Trump is. But yeah, he is, again, he does not have a strong character, and that disgusts me. Exactly. He was very critical of Trump, and then now he is not just parroting what Trump has said, but he is actually going a yard further in terms of how much he denounces people that Trump has denounced. Like, he takes an even more extreme position. I'm like, really, dude? You're the vice president. I don't think you need to suck up more to be the vice president. So, I don't know. I don't know if Rubio is gone Trump fascist or that fascist. I think that, I mean, yes, he does have some authoritarian tendencies, but so Rubio I respect because I actually think of the three, of Trump, Vance, and of Rubio, I honestly think that Rubio is the far more intelligent of the three. And so I have to respect that. But yeah. Trump and his administration are incompetent. You do not want competent administration. I would disagree. Considering what Trump has been able to accomplish, I think his particularly this term, his administration is competent because they are able to actually get things done. They are able to get the wrong things done, but they've mobilized ICE. They have, ICE, his budget has ballooned. They are managing to deport a lot of people. Now they're running into the hurdle that the federal courts are becoming overbooked, and so people are actually being released because they can't be held, because they can't be tried fast enough. But when you look at that, you look at Venezuela. He very efficiently, very competently, or at least the military did, took him out. We now are basically in charge of their oil production, which is just mind-boggling to me that this isn't why the Europeans, why the people in Latin America are letting us do this with why isn't there more pushback? Why is it that we have done an obviously imperialistic move and people are like, that's bad, and not like really pissed? Maybe they are. Maybe I just don't see it. In terms of Gaza, the Board of Evil, the Board of Peace, like that seems to be going pretty well. So sadly, I think he is rather competent in what his administration is rather competent in what they are doing, because they are all yes men, and because they have such a stranglehold on Congress, on the wheels of government, Congress and the Supreme Court. And what Trump adds to that mix is a clear vision. He knows what he wants. He's going to get it. Vance, on the other hand, I don't think Vance knows what he wants. And so he's going to be wishy-washy. He is not going to be as assertive at enacting policy as Trump is. So, yeah. All right. Again, I have to say that I would have to say that the Trump administration is competent, because they are accomplishing pretty much everything that Trump wants to accomplish. Granted, he kind of embarrassed himself with Greenland. Yay. But I don't know if that's more of a punt than anything else. Yeah. All right. Anyway, enough politics. I got to go because I got to eat and I got a class in 2 hours. I am Professor Parks, and I advocate for the advancement of astronomy. I know I just spent a good amount of time talking about politics, but I actually do mainly talk about astronomy. If you like that sort of thing, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, because I will post randomly. So if you want to stay current with all that, please do that. If you'd like to support me financially, then please consider becoming a channel member. If you would want to help the observatory, please become one of my patrons. All of money from the patrons goes directly back into the observatory to buy things as mundane as power cords to things as snazzy as planetary cameras. And with that, I will... is this what I want? This... Let's see if this works. I will bid you adieu. Peace out. Clear skies.